Na kanale pridenews.pl witam Was Maciej. Witam, ponieważ już niebawem, 31 października do Polski przyjadą gwiazdy RuPaul Drag Race ze swoim niezwykłym programem. O tym między innymi na pridenews.pl możecie przeczytać. Na początek też przepraszam za mój głos, ale jestem bardzo chory i postaram się tą rozmowę przeprowadzić jak najbardziej profesjonalnie i jak najlepiej mi się to uda zrobić. Też przy okazji przepraszam za mój język angielski, którym no nie jest najlepszy, jednak na szczęście udało się wszystko załatwić tak, abym był w miarę kumaty, jeżeli chodzi o to, o czym będziemy rozmawiać i też mój stan zdrowia pozwolił na tyle, aby się dzisiaj spotkać z Ginger Minj. Hello, Ginger.
Hi, how are you, honey?
Oh, I'm very exciting because I talked to you. This is the first time when I can meet star from RuPaul's Drag Race, so I'm very grateful that you have found the time. Do you like to participate in Pride events? In which ones? Pride, drag show, or other?
Do I like Pride? I love Pride. I try to live every day of my life like it's Pride. You want to go out there and be proud of who you are and what you do and what you have to offer to the world. But I feel like going to an actual Pride event or celebrating Pride as a community, there's just such a strength and a power in it. And it kind of like powers me up to my full potential and gets me through the rest of the year.
Do you go there as Ginger Minj or private?
Both. I'm really proud of Ginger and I'm really proud of Joshua. I'm kind of proud of who I am and who I fought to be my whole life. So I go as both. And I let both sides of me really celebrate with everybody else.
Do you like to work?
Do I like to work? Of course. Of course.
Oh.
It's one of those things where, I'm so blessed to be able to do what I'm really passionate about. I love doing drag. I love performing for people. I like making people smile. I like making people laugh, making people think. So to me, work is such a joy and such a pleasure that I never get tired of it because it doesn't actually feel like work.
Oh. Are you busy? Do you work constantly or do you have longer moments of break?
Oh, I work constantly. Even before I was on RuPaul's Drag Race, I was working, 10 shows a week, 7 days a week. I'm still running from one gig to the next. I just enjoy what I do. And I won't say that I've ever become a millionaire off of it. So I'm not doing it for the money. I'm certainly doing it because I'm really passionate about it. And I work all the time. I have a book coming out that I wrote called Southern Fried Sass, which I encourage everybody to go and pre-order right now. It drops on November 9th. And it's a really fun book. So that took a long time to write. And I was doing that in airports or in the backs of clubs while I was traveling around the world doing shows and movies and all sorts of stuff. So I like to stay busy.
You start in Hocus Pocus 2 for Disney Plus. Can you tell how you joined the cast?
Yeah. So it was directed by Anne Fletcher, who is a good friend of mine, and she had directed Dumplin'. And that's where I got to meet her, the Netflix movie with Jennifer Aniston, Kathy Najimy. And Kathy Najimy and I became pretty close friends on the set of Dumplin'. So whenever Hocus Pocus 2 rolled around, they knew that they wanted me to be a part of it, and they knew that it was so important to me. I would have shown up just to carry the broomsticks, I just wanted to be a part of it. So they created that role. And Fletcher called me. I was over in London at the time and my phone rang and I was like, why is Anne Fletcher calling me at 2 a.m? And I answered the phone and she said, Ginge, you got to get on an airplane and you got to get over here because we need you to do this movie with us and bring some friends. So I brought Kimora and Cornbread with me and we just had the best time. I mean, they created it specifically for me to have an opportunity to be a part of it. And it ended up being just one of the best experiences of my life. Everybody was so kind.
Were you previously in Salem, where the first part of the film was shot?
I've spent a lot of time in Salem. It's one of my favorite places, but we didn't actually get to film the sequel in Salem. We actually shot it in Newport, Massachusetts, which isn't far from Salem, but it's the landscape is a little more widespread. So it's easier to get camera crews and big crowds in and out without blocking up the streets. And a lot due to the fact that Hocus Pocus one is such a huge cult classic and everybody loves it. Now you can't go into Salem without getting caught in traffic of some sort. Like it's super congested because it's a very tiny place. And you don't really realize that when you watch the movie. So as disappointing as it was not to be able to film where they filmed the original, I could certainly understand why.
Mm, Bette Midler was in the cast. What was it like for you to meet her?
I was so nervous because Bette Midler's she's an icon. She's beyond the level of a superstar. You know, like she's somebody that even if you're not familiar with her work, you know who she is. And I, of course, being a little gay boy growing up in America, I absolutely loved and adored her and stole a lot of jokes from her through the years. You know, I absolutely loved her. So I was very nervous. But going on to the set, those three ladies did not give the three of us a chance to be nervous. We walked on, and the first thing Bette Midler said was, "You were robbed." And this was right after All Star 6 had ended. And I don't know if she's ever watched an episode of RuPaul's Drag Race in her life, but it meant a lot to me that she considered my feelings enough to do a little bit of research and to kind of disarm me right at the beginning and make me feel very welcome and like I was her coworker, not just somebody who happened to be there. And she treated me that way the entire time we were shooting for those 2 weeks. She really just took me under her wing and she showed me on the monitors how the best way to light my scene or the best angle to film myself from and all of the things that I probably should be a little better at considering what career I'm in, but things that never dawned on me until she really stopped and took the time to show me how to do it. And I always say that she's my new drag mom because she's like taught me how to be bigger and better than I ever thought I could be.
Well, she's sweet and she supports you.
Yeah, she's really wonderful. And they all stay in contact with us too. I mean, we don't sit down and chat on the phone for hours every day, but every now and again we'll get a text message or an email or a tweet saying, "How you doing, girl? I want to make sure everything's still going good. You got any questions for me?" And it's really nice to have that kind of relationship with somebody that you admire and aspire to be, really.
Okay, overall, um, how was it working with your drag sisters on set?
Great. They allowed me to, they didn't allow me to choose the two that I worked with, but they allowed me to give them a list of girls that I thought would be really great in the roles. And they chose Cornbread and Kimura from the list that I had given them. And we had the best time. I mean, it's just three queens, three sisters out there. I mean, kind of like Kathy Bett and Sarah Jessica Parker. We're just three girls who shared one experience, and we're happy to be there and just kind of share this whole new moment and experience that was just kind of coming at us really quick. And I'm glad I had the two of them because we had a good time, but we also really leaned on each other for a lot of support.
Do you remember your first drag?
My first drag, like when I first did drag, or the first drag
Yes,
queen I ever
yes.
saw.
No.
Um, the first drag that I ever did, well, it wasn't even a performance, really. If we want to go back to like the first time I did drag, there was this little bar, and I'm going to preface this by saying I don't think anybody underage should get an ID and sneak into a bar. But when I was growing up in Leesburg, Florida, there was no gay scene. I felt very, very alone, very isolated. It was a very depressing and dark time for me. And I had to find, like RuPaul says, my tribe. And we had this one little gay bar that opened down the street. It was a big deal when it opened. All the newspapers said the devil has come home and it's going to ruin the town, all this. It didn't even last a year, but I knew that it would be my one chance to kind of meet people who were a little bit more like me. So I looked enough like my cousin's boyfriend's ID if I had just disguised myself a little. And I said, well, what better disguise than to show up in drag? That way, the facial features are similar enough, but they're supposed to look different. So I put on drag that I borrowed from people, and I went to this club, and I didn't do anything. I didn't drink, I didn't party, I didn't do any of that. I just kind of sat and took it all in. And it was like that first moment in my life where I realized I wasn't alone. So I wouldn't suggest other people run and do that because now there are other ways to meet your community. But it was certainly something that kind of saved my life at the time. And then my first drag performance, I got cast. I was a theater baby growing up my whole life. I did theater. And I always say eventually I ran out of boy roles to play. So I started playing the girls. I got cast in a drag role for an original play called Boys, Boys, Boys. And it was 8 men willing to go completely naked and 2 drag queens. And I was like, I feel like my grandmother would completely disown me if I ever got naked on stage, but she loves drag queens, so I'll give it a try. And I tried it, and it really took off. Like I found in that moment kind of what I was supposed to do. I haven't looked back since. That was 20 years ago.
Oh, do you remember your first dress?
My first dress, I do remember it because it was my sister's, and it was a little stretch dress. It was very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was like they almost looked like a tube, and they had these big flowers all over them. And my sister was similar enough to me in size that I knew there was enough stretch in there to kind of accommodate everything else. So I took her dress, and I took a wig from the community theater I was working at. And then I just kind of rummaged through my sister and my mom's makeup to kind of make it work.
You are in the cast of the European RuPaul's Drag Race Werq the World Tour, and you will perform in Poland, Warsaw as well.
Yes, yeah.
You will be able to see the show for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what this show is and what it'll be like.
Well, I'm going to tell you what the show is it's important right now because of everything going on in the world. It's really important that we have this opportunity to go out there and kind of share who we are and spread this message of love and of love and light. Always sounds so cheesy, but it's so true. It's like something that we need right now. And I think the community and the world needs it. I also think the show is it's unlike anything else that I've ever done. And I've done so many great things in my career. I've been very blessed with the things that I've done, but this is so big and so over the top. And there's dancers and there's explosions and the people are flying in the air. I mean, it really feels like a Cirque du Soleil show with drag queens. So like, how do you take two of the two most wonderful things in the world, Cirque du Soleil and drag, and put them together? And it just becomes like this great big spectacle, this big party. And I also think that as big as it is, it has those really intimate moments where the fans are going to get to see and connect with us, these girls that they have seen on television and they've fallen in love with throughout the years. You're really going to get that personal experience as well.
Do you like being on the road?
Like under oath. Yes. Put us under oath.
On the road.
Oh, yeah, on the road.
Road.
Oh, yes. Oh, my. I can't hear anything in here today. I'm sorry.
sorry.
I got too much hairspray. Yes, we're going to be on the road, and it's been a couple of years since I've done one of the big drag race tours. So I'm excited to kind of get back on the tour bus. I love tour bus life. It is so nice for me because you get off the bus, you do a show, you get back on, you fall asleep, and you'll wake up somewhere new. There's no rushing to the airport. There's no trying to get in your car and drive there. So it's really nice, and you get to really spend a whole lot of time with your sisters, and you get to have movie nights and share food, and just really have a good bonding experience with the girls. And I haven't gotten that opportunity in a few years because I've just been so busy with other things. So when they called me and said, would you come and host the European and Mexican leg of the tour? Like, absolutely, 100% count me in.
Drag queens who came to us recently were great very warmly. Would you like to come back to Poland with your own show?
Sure. You know, I've got a couple of one woman shows that I've done throughout the years that I always really like taking it somewhere new. And sometimes I get to play the same spots every couple of years. And that's great because you build a rapport with those people. But there's also something really exhilarating about sharing your story for the first time with people who haven't heard it and people who haven't gotten that chance to be in the room with you before. So it's really exciting for me to go to different places, particularly different countries, and share those things because there are a lot of differences, of course, culturally, but there's also a lot of similarities that I don't think people really realize until you hear the story. I was in Tel Aviv and telling my story and doing a show, and there were a lot of people there that really connected with it and went, you know, I never really realized just by watching you on TV from the little bits that I've gotten to hear about your life, I've never realized how much we actually have in common. So that's really fun for me to do.
What would you like to say the drag fans in Poland?
Drag fans in Poland, I love you. I cannot wait to come and visit you. Make sure you get your tickets and make sure that you go and get my book, Southern Fried Sass. I know it's a shameless plug, but it is my full life story. And there's also like 50 recipes in it. So it's all the food that I grew up loving. But yeah, get the book. If you ever wanted to know anything and everything about me, even the gory details, make sure you get the book.
Ginger Minj, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Oh, I feel like we're hugging.
Oh, hugging.
A virtual hug.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.